Greetings to all of you. Before anything else, I want to tell you that Yoshi-P's latest post is not identical to the ones from before. At least not for me, not as a content creator in general, but in my particular case. But of course, what post are we talking about? Yesterday, Naoki Yoshida, producer and developer of Final Fantasy XIV, had thrown out a very nebulous post about certain activities in Final Fantasy XIV that refer to the prohibited use of third-party tools. And while this seemed to be brought to his attention by the video and footage of the world-first raider Red Mage, where certain tools had been used to beat the boss or at least accompany that kill, Yoshida leaves some further hints and admonitions on the table that may or may not affect each individual player using any third-party tool. That is not just your hardware supporting software like Razer Synapse, Logitech G Hub, iQ, or whatever hardware you might find being supported by those apps. However, as some stated, this is basically nothing new compared to the previous warnings and admittance of disappointment about some people that take this very narrow line slightly too far. But there's a very important difference for me and maybe also other content creators in particular, which is the following. And before doing exactly what Yoshida wanted to avoid, namely that somebody shares excerpts of this text out of context, please just continue with care and in the best case read the full letter, which can be found in the description. Nonetheless, in this exact section he talked about not being able to check whether tools could possibly be assessed and allowed. That is physically impossible for Square Enix, so to keep them out of responsibility, which makes sense at a certain degree, and that they definitely don't want to moderate the whole third-party space spiraling around Final Fantasy XIV, by simply prohibiting the use of it entirely. He further states that it is impossible for us to check what programs are installed on every player's PC. This is why they cannot identify and reprimand offenders 100% of the time. To offer more clarity on the process, here are a few examples of the rule violations they prioritize for investigation. First, use of tools that allow players to more easily complete content. Second, modification of the UI to display additional information. 3. Use of packet spoofing tools. And 4. Any actions or public statements that promote use of third-party tools. And while the first two are still kinda nebulous and vague, the last two aren't. While trying to figure out what packet spoofing tools are and what cases he's referring to, due to an extended read of the comments section on Mr. Happy's and Zeppler's video, by the way a shout out to both of them for covering this topic, packet spoofing or IP spoofing is usually described as the creation of Internet Protocol IP packets having a source IP address with the purpose of concealing the identity of the sender or impersonating another computing system. Although this might affect the usual nature of how people are using VPN clients to reduce their latency and ping for server communication, I do believe that Square refers to more serious misbehavior, primarily used by bots or cheaters to bypass usual limitations of your character's movements or things connected to this, acceleration speeds, range and limit of actions, or abusing the sloppy engine to gain advantages in PvP. Or in the case someone described under Mr. Happy's video, bots were speed hacking themselves through the main scenario quest to gain a very malicious and quickened access to content locked behind it. On the other hand, and to the point I am worried and anxious about my personal decisions and answers to this topic, is this last sentence. Any actions or public statements that promote use of third-party tools. Which directly refers to simply anyone promoting tools like the Advanced Combat Tracker or even G-Shade. That, to make it clear again, so that really nobody is unnecessarily worried or starts a shitpost somewhere because of misunderstandings. You, as the user of G-Shade or ACT, will not be suspended, banned or even recognized as such a user, as long as you're not publicly talking or spreading info about these tools and softwares. As Yoshi-P literally stated, they don't have the tools nor rights to observe your PC privacy and behavior, even though they could possibly catch suspicious activities that is getting transferred between your client and the game servers. That again is mandatory to run the game. At least when you're not a Galaxy Brain hacker that emulates the server in some ways, according to some more comments on said videos. So, this post doesn't change anything for users of the parsing plugins of Advanced Combat Tracker, unless they formally reach out to the developers or hosts of that tool to shut them down, or send a whole reprimand out to users of ACT to show them how serious they are about not wanting it to be part of their game. Needless to say that G-Shade, which basically alters your DLL file to grant access to graphic acceleration and shader amplification that is integrated within your native graphics drivers anyway. So nothing they could ever prohibit to use other than red flagging stuff like adaptive sync features as well, which would open up an even wider stage of nonsense, like prohibiting to play the game at 60 frames, with just certified monitors or crap like that. Meaning, they don't want that. They never banned anyone that didn't deserve the ban in the first place, at least not that I have recognized or heard from it. But now to my problem with the exact line of the letter. Being a content creator on YouTube with close to 120,000 of subscribers, I might have gotten into the crossfire. Or it could even be a targeted shot, which is justified by these terms of service and the mindset of Team Yoshida. Having at least 2 or 3 videos with views over 200,000, I'm definitely promoting the use of these tools, and the public statement premise is indeed checked as well. However, after quite a long back and forth in my head, I am not going to take these down, except someone of Square Enix is asking me to do so and speaks to me directly about their reasoning. For the first reasons I keep them on YouTube, I want to dive with you together a bit into German law systems that easily can be transferred over to Anglo-American systems or other law systems on the world. Especially about the terms of service, which is called Allgemeine Geschäftsbedingungen in Germany. So this means it could get a bit technical, and I'm also not completely sure about all the English translations, so take the next part with a grain of salt or just skip it. The crux in my law school attendance had been the following. Terms of service do not offer any rights to negotiate about, at least not when you're just one particular consumer, as these are a contract being cooperated with a multitude of people, and disputing about certain aspects are not seen economically realizable. However, denying these terms of service would render the contract invalid in the first place, and a contractual relationship would not even materialize. So, what does the consumer do if they want to access the product or service anyways? Yes, they accept these terms, even though they might disagree with certain aspects, just to get access to said service or product. Which leads to a contract agreement with one party being in denial about certain obligations or definitions of this contract, but no chance to negotiate about it, which is common in usual contracts. That is when consumer protection comes into play, as the rules of commercial intercourse granted the producer or company the contractual advantage in the first place. So, to solve that problem of the consumer disadvantage without interrupting the flow of trade, there's a mechanism or law concept that tries to balance out these disadvantages. So whenever your rights, may it be the consumer rights or especially human rights, are violated, the exact line or term doing so is getting replaced by a line or term that is common ground and which can keep interests of both parties alive while not putting one side into drastical disadvantages. The reason behind this is kinda simple. If this process would be normally followed on, the contract would be put to an end, with possible bad reparation fees for one or even both parties. So instead of this, the lines are automatically replaced with those lines not penalizing one party too much, and the contract is upheld to keep the contractual relationship. That means to protect the consumer, which usually is in a financial disadvantage, producers have to be very clear with their terms of service, and also avoid confining limitations to the consumer, hold up against the common sense of the subject and common ground in their category of offerings. Which leads us to the fact that just throwing out a full prohibition of third-party tools cannot be upheld against criticism, because of the lack of specification, and generalizing the limitations is uncommon in range and impact, as it would include even Discourse servers or browser-based stuff that is not particularly authorized by Square Enix. And yeah, the whole jurisdictional idea behind this is called the blue pencil test. If you want to know more about this, check out the link in the description. But what does that mean for my case here? As simply as it is, even though Square Enix is offering a fair playing field and states clear rules, or not so clear rules, that we have to follow to enjoy their product, there might be lines that put the player or users in a heavy disadvantage, as we would never have the chance to negotiate these terms of service in the first place. We need to be compensated in our engaged disadvantage by comparing some lines and terms against common use of these ToS in other categories, games or online spaces in general. And when diverging too heavily, these lines might get replaced, and they will do so automatically, as we had no chance of denying them when we wanted to take part in their product or service. Which means I never had the chance to talk about these terms or negotiate, especially this new one, checking our voice in public space, which in this case is YouTube. because I personally would oppose them, because I think being vocative and upfront about these tools and teaching a safe and friendly use of them helps others to enhance their gameplay experience, or at least talk about possible methods of getting better at their own performance or making the game look more crisp with stuff like G-Shade. I know, gamers can be immature idiots in the wildest times, but usually we should assume them to command reason and common sense to be their measurement of interaction with other people. So I really feel like the simple and entire prohibition of this aspect doesn't lead to anything else than more frustration and anger, and splits communities even further apart than it's already the case. Which leads me to the part 2 of the reason why I won't put down these videos. First of all, there were 2 problematic videos that I unlisted. While personally standing behind them completely, I understand that being a content creator with a certain reach, it is something I should not promote. So these are only visible for people with a link that you can always get if you're interested by asking me personally on Discord or Twitch. However, there's a big sense of indication and a symbol standing behind these videos, and the use of advanced comment tracker and G-Shade itself. These tools are essentials, not for all players, but for a very significant portion of them. And I believe that I'm not only talking for myself when I say PvE without advanced comment tracker would not be the same for me. And I don't think I could enjoy it as long as I did and still do, as well as some parts of my content relying on that. On top of that, these are still one of my most viewed videos, which can easily be seen as an indication of what some players want, and that is not harassment, but outgrowing yourself, getting up to the challenge to improve and become a better player. Yes, absolutely, ban those harassment people and maybe even hire more staff members to make that a possible solution. But stop putting the blame on tools like ACT or even all third-party tools altogether. Not seeing numbers and being totally blindfolded about what's happening with your rotation or the one of your party is just not working in the way that extreme trials, savage or ultimate encounters are designed. Lacking damage or being able to find out where the lack of damage is coming from is not a feature, but a restriction that works completely against your boss design. So either integrate your own solution or start making fights more difficult through other aspects and mechanics and not by damage checks. Yes, I do love the new PvP, but why can't we communicate with our team? Which is exactly coming from the same mindset, and I know why they're doing it. But please stop enforcing this safe space and environment over people's freedom to play the game in normal ways where communication is an essential part in. I mean, we are no 10-year-old children playing Fortnite or Minecraft. We as the players can be taken seriously, even though we tend to be weirdos altogether and do the craziest stuff in this game. However, we are responsible for our own actions. And if someone's a dick, ban them. But don't start banning all the people that drank from the same water like they did. And of course, I do realize that there are other parts of ACT that are much more leaning towards the cheating aspect. And I think that is an unfair advantage that needs to get penalized somehow. And yes, I don't want Final Fantasy to become the shitfest that is WoW when it comes to trivialization of encounters by using numerous add-ons that any serious raid guild is demanding you to have now. But please, set this line, make a clear statement or none at all, and just pick out those people that took it too far in your opinion, even if that means banning me as the poster child. Nonetheless, I will not take down any of those videos where I stand behind to 100% and try to teach exactly these good manners in using tools and helping others to get them without worrying about getting infected with malicious software or stuff like that. And to make it clear, at the time this video has been scripted, I am not banned and have great respect for Yoshi-P to stand up with a statement like this. And while I do agree on aspects of the whole prohibition topic, it's a pity that it's still so vague and splits the camps between elitist hardcore players and toxic casuals even further than ever before, because nobody's getting a clear set of rules, as without penalizing rules, no grown-up person can take those seriously. Ban the cheaters, ban the bots, ban the toxic assholes with all the force you have. And if by any chance you have a very good day, sir, maybe think about integrating a slimmed down ACT or even G-Shade to have PlayStation players enjoy these wonderful tools as well. And for all the players out there, keep using whatever makes your game a better one and stop being rude or toxic to others, which is always the source of problems, not the tools that could possibly funnel it. Sorry for the harsh tone in this video, but I felt obliged to talk about it as it directly affects me personally and some of my ideals I stand for with this channel. So, let us just be nice to each other with or without using tools and share the love we have for Final Fantasy XIV. because that is still what connects all of us, right? Have a wonderful day, and until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep loving Final Fantasy.